It will not stop. That is the thing about Shishaldin right now. It just will not stop. Most volcanoes have cycles. They wake up, they release, they rest. But Shishaldin has been doing something different, something that has the Alaska Volcano Observatory watching its instruments around the clock, something that when you look at the cumulative data, the gas readings, the thermal signals, the unrest pattern, it stops feeling like routine volcanic activity and starts feeling like something is building. And guys, the SO2 numbers coming out of this volcano right now are the part of this story that most people are completely missing. So let me give you the full picture, because this is one of those stories where the details matter enormously. Shishaldin Volcano sits on Unimak Island. That is the largest island in the Aleutian chain. Alaska, the far western edge of the United States. It is one of the most remote and most active volcanoes in North America. Its cone is almost perfectly symmetrical. Scientists actually use it as a textbook example of a classic stratovolcano shape. It rises to 2,857 meters. That is 9,273 feet above sea level, a near-perfect triangle of rock and ice sitting in the middle of one of the most seismically and volcanically active regions on Earth. And right now, it is pumping sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere at rates that are growing. The SO2 plume is expanding, not shrinking, not stabilizing, growing. When I saw that data, I had to go deeper, because SO2, sulfur dioxide gas, is not just a pollution number. It is a direct communication from the magmatic system below. It is the volcano telling you what is happening in its plumbing. And right now, Shishaldin is talking very loudly. Let me explain why SO2 matters so much, because I think this is the key to understanding what is really happening here. Sulfur dioxide gas is dissolved in magma at depth. It stays dissolved as long as the pressure is high enough to keep it trapped inside the melt. But as magma rises, as it moves upward through the volcanic conduit toward the surface, the pressure drops. And when the pressure drops, the SO2 comes out of solution. It exsolves. It becomes a free gas. And it rises and it vents through the summit crater into the atmosphere. So when you see SO2 emissions increasing at a volcano, you are seeing direct evidence of magma that is either rising or degassing at a shallower level than before. A growing SO2 plume means the magmatic system is becoming more active, not less. The Alaska Volcano Observatory, the AVO, which is operated jointly by the USGS and the University of Alaska Fairbanks, has been tracking elevated SO2 output at Shishaldin continuously. Satellite-based SO2 detection has shown the plume extending downwind from the summit over significant distances. These are not trace amounts that require sensitive instruments to detect. These are plumes visible in satellite imagery, plumes large enough to be tracked across hundreds of kilometers of the North Pacific. And this is happening against a backdrop of continuous unrest that Shishaldin has maintained for years now, because here is the history you need to know. Shishaldin is not a volcano that just woke up last week. It has been one of the most persistently active volcanoes in the entire Aleutian arc. But the recent phase of activity is something different in character from the baseline restlessness that scientists expect from this system. In 2023, Shishaldin had a significant eruptive sequence. Lava flows reached the flanks. There was explosive activity at the summit. Ash clouds were produced that concerned aviation authorities because the Aleutian Arc sits directly beneath some of the busiest trans-Pacific flight routes in the world. Thousands of flights between North America and Asia pass through or near Aleutian airspace every single week. A major ash-producing eruption from a volcano like Shishaldin does not just affect the empty landscape around it. It affects global aviation in real time. The AVO raised the aviation color code during that 2023 activity. Orange, then red, the highest level. That means ash emission hazardous to aircraft. After that intense period, the activity modulated somewhat, but it never fully stopped. And now the SO2 plume is growing again, and the unrest is escalating again. And the question that scientists are working to answer right now is whether this is the system cycling back toward another major eruptive phase, or whether it is something more sustained and more significant than what we saw before. I want to talk about the Aleutian Arc itself for a moment because understanding where Shishaldin sits geologically tells you everything about why this volcano behaves the way it does. The Aleutian Arc is one of the most extraordinary volcanic chains on Earth. It stretches for roughly 1,900 kilometers, about 1,200 miles from the Alaska Peninsula out across the North Pacific in a curving chain of islands. There are more than 130 volcanoes in the Aleutian Arc. More than 50 of them have been active in recorded history. This chain exists because the Pacific Plate is diving beneath the North American Plate along the Aleutian Trench, one of the deepest ocean trenches on Earth. The subduction is fast. The plate is moving at roughly 7 centimeters per year. That is fast in tectonic terms. Fast subduction means fast pressure buildup. Fast pressure buildup means frequent and powerful volcanic and seismic activity. Shishaldin sits near the eastern end of this system, where the subduction dynamics produce some of the most vigorous magma generation in the entire arc. The magma that feeds Shishaldin is generated as the subducting Pacific Plate descends into the hot mantle and releases water into the rock above it. That water lowers the melting point of the mantle rock. The rock melts. The magma rises, and it has been rising beneath Shishaldin for thousands of years, building that perfect symmetrical cone, one eruption at a time. And right now, the magma is rising again. The SO2 is telling us that. Let me talk about the thermal signals as well, because this is the other part of the data picture that you need to see. Satellite-based thermal monitoring of Shishaldin's summit crater has shown persistent elevated temperatures, a thermal anomaly that has not gone away. In volcanology, a persistent summit thermal anomaly combined with growing SO2 emissions is a very specific combination of signals. It tells you there is either an open conduit system allowing heat and gas to vent continuously from a shallow magma body, or there is fresh magma that has reached very shallow depths beneath the crater and is actively degassing. Either way, something hot and gas-rich is very close to the surface at Shishaldin right now. And close to the surface at a stratovolcano like Shishaldin means close to an explosive eruption threshold. I found recent monitoring data from the AVO and cross-referenced it with satellite SO2 measurements from the Copernicus Sentinel-5P satellite, which is one of the primary tools scientists use globally to track volcanic gas emissions from space. And what that data shows is a pattern that has been intensifying rather than relaxing over recent weeks. The seismic activity beneath Shishaldin has also been elevated. Small earthquakes beneath the volcanic edifice, the kind of seismicity that volcanologists associate with fluid movement, with magma migrating through cracks in the rock, with the internal plumbing of the volcano adjusting to accommodate rising material. When seismicity and SO2 emissions and thermal anomalies all trend upward together, that convergence is not coincidence. That is a volcanic system telling you it is preparing to do something. The AVO has maintained an elevated watch level on Shishaldin. That designation means the volcano is exhibiting signs of elevated unrest above background levels, not the highest level yet, but above background, and trending in the wrong direction. Now, I want to address the question in the title directly. Is Alaska's giant waking up? Because Shishaldin is genuinely one of the giants of Alaskan volcanism. This is not a minor fumarolic system on a remote island that only specialists care about. This is a volcano with a documented history of eruptions powerful enough to inject ash into the stratosphere, powerful enough to affect hemispheric climate in the short term, powerful enough to shut down trans-Pacific aviation corridors. The 1999 eruption of Shishaldin was one of the most energetically significant Aleutian eruptions in the late 20th century. It produced a lava fountain from the summit crater that reached extraordinary heights. The eruption column went into the stratosphere. Ash was detected over vast areas of Alaska and beyond. That eruption came after a period of elevated SO2 emissions and seismic unrest, a period that, in retrospect, looks remarkably similar to what we are seeing right now. I am not saying 1999 is about to repeat. I am saying the precursor pattern has similarities that scientists are absolutely aware of and actively evaluating. And there is something else, something that makes Shishaldin uniquely dangerous in ways that go beyond the immediate volcanic hazard. Unimak Island, where Shishaldin sits, is surrounded by the North Pacific. The volcano's flanks descend directly into the ocean on multiple sides. If a major flank collapse were to occur during a large eruption, if a significant portion of the volcanic edifice were to fail and slide into the surrounding sea, the tsunami potential would be serious. The North Pacific is deep and wide, and a tsunami generated near Unimak Island would have fetch across enormous distances toward populated coastlines. This is not a theoretical concern. The 1946 Aleutian tsunami was generated by an earthquake near Unimak Island. It killed people in Hawaii. It was detected across the Pacific. The combination of volcanic and seismic hazard in this region is not abstract. It has demonstrated deadly reach before. And Shishaldin is sitting in the middle of that same hazard zone, growing its SO2 plume, maintaining its thermal anomaly, shaking with elevated seismicity, and refusing to stop. So what do we watch going forward? This is the critical question. Does the SO2 flux continue to grow, or does it plateau? If the sulfur dioxide output keeps increasing week on week, that is a strong signal that fresh magma is continuing to rise and degass at shallow levels. If it plateaus or decreases, that might indicate the system is reaching a temporary equilibrium. Does the seismic character change? Specifically, do we start seeing long-period earthquakes or very long-period seismic signals beneath the summit? Those types of earthquakes are specifically associated with fluid-filled crack resonance, with magma movement, and they often precede eruptive episodes at volcanoes like Shishaldin by hours to days. Does the thermal anomaly intensify? A sudden increase in the summit thermal signal could indicate that fresh hot material has breached the shallow crater zone. And critically, does the aviation color code change? The Avio updates its color code assessments in near real time. A move from orange to red at Shishaldin would signal that ash-producing eruption is either imminent or underway. Given the current trajectory of the monitoring data, that possibility is not remote. Guys, I have followed Aleutian volcanic activity for a long time, and I have to tell you, Shishaldin right now has the character of a volcano that is not winding down. It has the character of a volcano that is winding up. The SO2 plume is growing, the heat is persistent, the ground is shaking, and the system has a documented history of escalating from exactly this kind of elevated unrest to major eruptive activity. One of the most perfectly shaped volcanoes on Earth, one of the most active volcanoes in North America, sitting on a remote island above the North Pacific, pumping sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere at increasing rates, and it just will not stop. I am staying on the pulse of this one for you. Every update that comes from the AVO, every new satellite pass, every change in the monitoring data, I will be watching it. Check the end screen for more. Stay safe, guys. Be aware. Bye-bye.